it. It's definitely not one of my favorites. It has its moment, but it's very, there is a lot of Steve Reich kind of experimentation, things that are not really music in the common sense, in a very professional, scientific, rhythmical sense. Yes, the musical pieces have titles. I would have just named them Thrack Part A, B, C, D, something like that. But again, the songs have titles, but they're almost immaterial. It's I think that more than any King Crimson record, well, really they all, not all, but they very much are like this, from Lark Tongues in Aspic. Well, Lark Tongues in Aspic, yes, but then the next two, you could kind of break them down in individual songs, in a realistic or logical manner. But Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair, and in some sense even Discipline, have to be listened to as a unit, as an album. And the track, definitely lot of instrumental tracks. What's worth listening here, the whole thing. I don't know if I want to pick up any individual tracks. You got the boom and thrack. Again, if you're into that kind of things, in a garden, maybe here and there you got some segments. They do this again, that the rhythmical build up to the song that takes a little bit too long, very repetitive, very monotonic, and then they go into the madness of the songs. Anyway, not the best King Crimson record by any means. And the next one, I think that Fripp went in a slightly different direction, and now Tony Levine, who is probably the most prominent Chapman stick player, even more than Chapman, the guy who himself invented the stick. So Tony Levine leaves, Adrian Belew stays, Bruford leaves. And so this is a very new, modern King Crimson, right? With Gunn, Mastelletto, and Belew. And they release The Construction of Light. Construction spelled with a KC. Construction to KC, King Crimson, right? Capitalized in the middle. On one hand, it's very similar to Thrack, but on the other hand, he did the right thing. He went back to the back catalog and mixed in a lot of early King Crimson, most prominently Lark Tongues in Aspic. So he just took off where Lark Tongues in Aspic ended, the third one on Three of a Perfect Pair, and he picked it up there. And then you have The Construction of Light. Again, this is also, in my opinion, meant to be listened to best as one unit, as an album, but you could still take out individual songs. I would go with Fractured, and then Lark Tongues in Aspics, part 4, which is in and of itself sometimes broken up into individual parts. And you could also have the coda, I Have a Dream, and the opener, Prozac Blues, which could be listened to as individual independent songs. Again, this is a very modern and older Fripp. I don't think that Fripp is too concerned with pleasing the fans, or maybe he is a little bit critic sensitive. I don't know. He likes being in the chart. He likes the commercial success, and he doesn't allow anyone to upload any King Crimson on YouTube. He guards it very, very vehemently and jealously. I used to be super, super critical of him, almost to the point that I hated him. And by the way, there are reasons to hate Fripp. I'm not suggesting that anyone individually should, but like most people, he's not perfect, and like most people in his position, that besides for fame and money, he has an intellect. He's an intelligent person and is a very talented person. In fact, I've read somewhere that he was born tone deaf, and he taught himself. So he worked hard on recognizing music and being such a brainiac musician. So that's a huge accomplishment. And people with such sort of powers and talent and body work in their past, they subconsciously take upon themselves or believe themselves being above common people and having the, let's just say, the right or the disposition to tell them what to do or to force their opinions on others. Again, copyright is a whole complicated topic. Is it really theft? Playing someone else's music without giving credit or without paying them? In the very least, he put the entire King Crimson catalog on YouTube. So he gets the ad revenue, whatever money that generates, he gets at least part of it, right? Whatever YouTube doesn't steal from him, or YouTube, the commissions, goes to him. But he guards it very jealously. So I'm not gonna say that he's as big a douchebag as Penguin Mastic. For those of you who don't know, there is a fat, disgusting, nasty, condescending, conceited, ugly, stinking fat slob, originally from Sweden. Now he lives in Florida, and he tries to copy Richie Blackmore and Eddie Van Halen. He's a great guitar player. He has great technique and great feel too. But he's a disgusting human being, which is not rare in rock and roll, right? So there are people like Axl Rose and what's the name of the first singer of Van Halen? I can't stand that guy. David Lee Roth, a big douchebag, Dave Mustaine. But anyway, I don't want to go into that. That's a whole topic for another video. The biggest D-bags of rock and roll. But Fripp definitely doesn't belong in that family. So as far as being a human being, I think that most of the time he is a gentleman, a mensch, as you would say. But again, he's got a bug up his ass with the copyright. He won't let anyone upload anything King Crimson on social media. I think on Rumble you could. I think he wouldn't go after Rumble. But Rumble is a whole other topic. So anyway, Construction of Light, definitely better than Thrak. Okay? Let that much be said. And you really want to take a single track out of it, go for Fractured, which has been revisited and sort of built in one of his earlier records. And then comes the last record today, released in the early 2000s, The Power to Believe, and they take another turn. And I think this is maybe the second time or the third time in the history that they released 2 consecutive records with the same lineup. And as you would expect, there is nothing expectable on this record. On one hand, you could say that this record has more music and more songs in the normal sense, but also less. So the experimentation is a little bit more hidden, less obvious. He doesn't just do the Steve Reich kind of thing in your face. He hides it in more listenable songs. And I think that of the trio of the last period, of the last iteration of King Crimson, this would be the best. Again, I think it's really meant to be listened to as one unit. He's got level 5 that you can listen to it, which is probably a hidden hint to Larktong's in Aspic number 5. But then you have The Power to Believe, again, 3 takes, 3 versions three parts of the song. A good record. If you can bring yourself to get out of the 70s King Crimson mentality and come up to what he wants to do this time with this iteration of King Crimson, and in the middle there were myriads of other things, just live touring bands, and he had one form of the band, I think, with three drummers. So he always did some things back and forth, either under King Crimson or some other titles and EPs. I think with this one he released some EPs before and after, and always a lot of compilations of box sets with outtakes and alternative takes. So even if they don't release a bona fide brand new studio album, they do come up with new stuff or new material for the diehard fans, and maybe for people who don't want to buy the entire back catalog. So for the time being, if we don't go crazy, if we don't take into consideration things such as live recordings and EPs and compilations, things of that nature, this closes the last chapter on King Crimson, or King Crimson's latest iteration, latest version, if you will, with Trey Gunn and Mestellato. Again, we don't know what history can bring, but they haven't released a full bona fide studio album with new material in 20 odd years, right? So The Power to Believe came out in '03, and since nothing. But again, Fripp, as long as Fripp is still alive, and I wish him a good and long life and good health, despite the fact that he could be a little bit less childish about not allowing uploads to YouTube. But again, that's different topic for a different day. But anyway, for the time being, let's go back to Black Sabbath, whom we left off right before the beginning of the last era of King Crimson, after the sad and dramatic end of the Dehumanizer tour, the reunion tour, where Dio refused to open for Ozzy. And of course, Black Sabbath are again without a vocalist, and Iommi seems to run back to Tony Martin as fast as he ran away from him as soon as Dio became available. Sorry there, but again, it's rock and roll, it's cutthroat business, nasty business. So anyway, Tony Martin comes back to Black Sabbath, and they release two albums, Cross Purposes and Forbidden. Both records, in my opinion, do not live up by a long step to the previous period with Martin. I don't know. I don't buy these two records. I don't like them. They're not absolutely horrible, but I don't like the sound on Forbidden. They're too similar to each other. No, there's nothing really very good and very grabbing on either of these records. On Cross Purposes, you got a handful of good songs, but not a ton. So it's nothing you haven't heard before. It's not something insane. It's kind of trying to rehash the first three, and doesn't live up to them. Virtual Death, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Evil Eye that they wrote with Van Halen. So it's an okay record. Of course, we want to have the whole library, the whole catalog. So we get them, but for practical purposes, there's not too much of a reason to have either of these records. The Illusion of Power, the opening of Forbidden is okay. Guilty as Hell, Rusty Angels, Kiss of Death. It's okay, but Geezer played on cross purposes, and Neil Murray plays on a second. So great music, great musicians here banging it out. But again, nothing too special. Around after Forbidden, the rumor mill starts working overtime. There's all kinds of rumors. It's somehow, for some reason, it kind of ties in with Judas Priest looking for a singer. I think that at a certain point someone suggested that Tony Martin was going to Judas Priest or something like that. It kind of came up a little bit, and because Halford sat in for Ozzy in '92, which was their first big concert playing together. They actually did play, I think, one date, a couple songs on Live Aid, a charity concert that was organized in '85 or '86 or so. But the rumor never really died from '92, and then in '96, '7, it woke up again and started working overtime, and it was always in the press and people were talking. And in the late '90s, like '96, '97, a lot of people, especially in the States, started having internet. And lo and behold, in '97, the reunion concert does happen. All four of them play again, a handful of dates. I think only in the States, only in California, but I'm not really sure. And of course, that intensifies the rumor mill, and some people do confirm the rumors. First, kind of outsiders, people who work with the band or on the record. And there's supposed to be a reunion record, which in the end never happens, a studio record. They do release Reunion, which I was very tempted to buy, but was too expensive at the time, and I ended up never having enough for that, on top of other more important things, which of course I do regret in retrospect. I regret not having won the lottery 40 years ago. Anyway, nothing happens of the studio album, and so Iommi has to leave. Not just Iommi, but everybody just goes home. I think that Ozzy, instead of doing a Black Sabbath album, he went on to work on, or to finish maybe his studio album. And as characteristic for Ozzy, he just doesn't react and doesn't follow through. So in the meantime, Iommi hooks up with Dio for a fourth time after the disaster of Dehumanizer. Not really a disaster. The album is not that bad, but something did go wrong. And they hook up again and they go on a big tour. Oh, they release a compilation, the Dio years, and with 3 songs that go down very well with the fans. I really love Eye on the Wall, or Ear on the Wall, and The Wind, I Spoke to the Wind, or The Wind something, Run with the Wind. three songs, like a mid-tempo, a slow, and a fast song. And the fans, including myself, like the songs, and so they decide to release a full studio album. And of course, Ozzy and co, meaning Sharon, they do enough lawyer thing and Ozzy things to prevent them from using the name Black Sabbath. They can't do that. Maybe something happened during the reunion, when they wanted to do the album. Maybe there was some sort of contract they signed. But anyway, they call it Heaven and Hell, and I think it's up to personal decision or preference on whether this is a curse or a blessing. Anyway, they released a record that, in my opinion, is kind of on par with Dehumanizer. It fixes the technical problems but the songs are not as good or memorable as the good ones on Dehumanizer. The big song from the record is Bible Black, that people know, great song. I don't know if this is anyhow some sort of a nod or a reference to King Crimson. More likely than not, it isn't. It just sounds good. Rock and Roll Angel is pretty good. Eating the Cannibals, Follow the Tears. I mean, they're good songs, but they're not. They don't live up to the to what you would expect from this band. And they don't play a lot of these songs live on the tour. It's mostly Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. I've seen that tour, and in those days, I think they were opening for Motorhead, who were opening for Priest, or they had a couple of different setups. But it was a good show. So Dio was sick already, I think. I'm not sure to what extent he was conscious of his sickness, but it was pretty much the end. But I certainly didn't know, and I don't think too many people did. So that's pretty much it. And then they reunite again for 13. The last time that, at least up to date, Black Sabbath would ever record, they come up with the idea of 13. I think that they had a contract and they had to release the album from the reunion, from those sessions. And of course, the quote-unquote fiasco is well known. They took this guy, Rick Rubin, who was a well-known producer, mostly with rap records. So why would they work with him? I don't know. It became the in thing maybe at those times. There is another guy, I think, who also does record producing from, what is it called? Nine Inch Nails, Reznor, Trent Reznor. I think he also does something to that effect. I don't know. I don't know what got into them. But the album is very heavily criticized, and I think for good reason. It just, something with the sound, again, is not good. But this time I think it's worse than with Dehumanizer. Something could have been done better, or should have been done better. They tried too hard to sound like the early records, which is a mistake that they did a couple of times during their career. But they, on the other hand, maybe they tried to present it like not wanting to go back to the early Black Sabbath. So I don't know what got into them. But this, to my taste, is not a great record. It's great that it happened. It's cool. It's the original Black Sabbath, but it's an old and tired Black Sabbath. It's a Black Sabbath that doesn't have this enthusiasm and this madness in them. And you would have expected, or maybe thought, that the professionalism and the experience would make up for it. And to some extent it does, but it's not a very great, very memorable record. To me, the sound kind of bogs it down too much, kind of like a muffled. It's not really muffled, but it has something is lacking. But they do have a handful of good songs, so it's enjoyable to listen to, like a futuristic Black Sabbath in the 2000s. So they released 13, and to date, that is the last studio album. Again, there is another EP from 2016. To their credit, they don't package and repackage and take alternate takes and other versions like King Crimson, but again, the record label and the record company do their fair share of repackaging and re-releasing old material. So that's about it for King Crimson and Black Sabbath, two great, iconic old bands that had their ups and downs, mostly ups, great back catalog. So let's enjoy and celebrate their music. And before we go, let's do the ranking, because like I told you guys, I found out that it's a crime not to do a ranking. And again, to me, the ranking is a little bit arbitrary, and it doesn't really go one by one. They're typically groups of records, 4, 5, 6 records that are really in the top, and then you have more that could be anywhere. So I don't see a super strong reason on ranking them, but I guess in Rome, act as a Roman. So for King Crimson, I would go with The Wake of Poseidon. That's absolutely, two hands down, an insane record. And yes, to me, it's a step up and an improvement, although a slight one. On King Crimson, of course, the second one is Court of the Crimson King. Then I would go with Red. That's also a no-brainer. Then I would go with Discipline. Don't throw stuff on me. I really love Discipline. In my mind, it's a mind-boggling record. I know for a lot of you it's sacrilege to put it in middle of those from the 70s and this high, but it is for me. And Starless and Bible Black, I would go. Islands, I would put here Three of a Perfect Pair, because it's a great record despite its some of its, let's just say, weirdnesses, or not really faults, but lack of greatness. I would put here the Power to Believe. I think Power to Believe goes above Construction of Light, and then Construction of Light, and then I would go with Lizard, and then Threk, and finally Beat. So that's what it is. I think all of the studio records of King Crimson. For Black Sabbath, I would go with Sabotage, absolute freaking masterpiece. Heaven and Hell comes in second. Volume 4, Master of Reality, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. The first 4, I think they're super close to each other. It's really difficult to pick. Sabotage, Volume 4, Master of Reality, they are like the pantheon of the pantheon. The top 3 of the top 5. And Heaven and Hell definitely belongs there. Even though it sounds so different, and it's from a different period, and everything is different about it. But as far as an album goes, it's in the top 5, Black Sabbath. So again, Sabotage, Heaven and Hell, Volume 4, Master of Reality, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath ranks very high. Mob Rules, again, a great record. I would go with the first record, and then possibly 7 Star, Eternal Idol. I would go with Dehumanizer at this stage, and Tire with Tony Martin, and then Paranoid. I know for me, Paranoid from the Pantheon ranks pretty low. It's not a bad record. Maybe I should rank it higher. I don't know. It kind of could go both ways, but yeah, I could insert it somewhere between 7 Star and Mob Rules, maybe. But I love all these records. These are the very good records from the different periods. So after Mob Rules, let's just say Paranoid, if we put it here, 7 Star, Eternal Idol, Dehumanizer, Tire, Born Again. Also a good record. I still like listening to it despite its weird sound. Never Say Die. I really like that record. Very special record. So all of these, like the second chunk or the second group of Black Sabbath records are really good, and they're pretty much about the same level. So all of those that come after Mob Rules that I just mentioned. Next up, after Never Say Die, starts, let's just say, the bottom tier. I would begin that with Headless Cross, Technical Ecstasy, or Textasy, as I sometimes like calling it, and then The Devil You Know, 13, and then the last 2 with Tony Martin, Cross Purposes and Forbidden, are 2 that I don't really care for. So that was it about Black Sabbath and King Crimson. I hope to enjoy it, and I hope to see you soon on the next one. Rock on.